Yeah, free. I'm trying to get it, but I'm not getting it. Maybe I'll get it. I think that part there just harmonizes my fan, so well, I still haven't gotten it. And if I keep harmonizing my fan, I don't think I'll get it. But at least I did that. But on the other side of it, I didn't counter that to get to it. Sometimes you really don't know what it is, but you know when you're not on it, you know. And it depends which it you're talking about. Well, there's lowercase I, lowercase t, uppercase I, uppercase t, lowercase I, uppercase t, uppercase I, lowercase t, and that's only if we're dealing with black and white. as black on white, never mind white on black, never mind colors. So really, whenever we're talking about what it is, because like I was looking for it, but which it, you know, because the other it I hate. Anyway, yeah, so maybe I'll try a little more, and maybe I'll harmonize with my fan a little more, because there's two things that have happened so far. I haven't been on it, and I haven't been on it while harmonizing with my fan. I think it's my fan, because there was like this other like background buzz, or maybe it was a specific disharmony with my fan that created this other like harmonic, but at like the interference pattern was still at such a high frequency that it read as a tone, as a harmony, as kind of like flushing out, filling out a form of harmonics. But still not it. But maybe I could get it anyway. Sometimes just talking and trying helps to vent. And I guess this recording is dedicated to quote unquote the new age. If we get past this hump, this threshold, this bump, that one was closer to it. That one was closer to it. So if we call that one it, that harmonized with itness, the particular type of it I'm talking about, didn't seem to harmonize with my fan also. So then the question would be, what would harmonize with both the it that I think I was reaching toward and the fan, which is just, you know, there in the background, foreground, ground, okay, floor, technically second story floor, second 16th story floor. It's on a green carpet, kind of looks like the ground. Is the second story the ground? How do you find the exact ground on a surface with essentially, I mean, at what point does the surface not become infinite, you know, as far as like topology goes? I feel like I'm unqualified in a like not name dropping, but like jargon dropping. I'm jargon dropping. I just jargon dropped. But I don't know things except for the way that people talk in jargon. I don't know a lot of stuff. And when I say no, I guess I always rely back to like either math or physics. Maybe I shouldn't do that. Maybe I should try to rethink things because I wasn't always that way. But I guess it's because I'm so confused over the last several years, and I so desire like the truth or exactness that I have this feeling like everything else is a lie. But a lot of that's because everything goes too far in me sometimes because I'm so thirsty for a story and meaning, but for real, you know. And figuring out where to draw that line and worshiping, so to speak, the divine light of reason, which is funny, which I guess in the Renaissance era, that was like a finger toward God. And in the post-Enlightenment era, that was a finger toward the West's, the quote-unquote scholastic West's interpretation of Darwin. And that's a truncated definition of what that forked finger points to, but the best I could do on the spot. Right, so reason always seems to tend back to like logic or biology or like so much in popular vernacular, at least these days, just slightly subculture is reason, science, all this kind of thing. And it's certainly not mine. I read it over and over and over again from other sources, mostly hockey. And this is my terrible reinterpretation of it, or just to try to boil it down. You know, when it comes to reason, I may have said it before, but like if you don't have anything to say about root 2, if you can't speak, if someone can't say to you, root 2, respond, and you can't go on for at least a day, I mean, and even when I say that, because I'm thinking of myself, and I'm very unreasonable, but I have enough reason where if someone said to me, root 2, respond, I could take that seed and create a one-day world. I could do that. It depends on the day, how good it would be. I'd definitely have to rely upon some happy accidents and artistic license to get me from here to there, but it could be done. But if you can't even say that much, I mean, I don't know, because like, how do you define reason? How do you define the reason? But as far as like the quote-unquote logical side of reason goes, if you can't speak to root 2 at all, you have no claim to reason. That is I would say that's a conjecture. Yes. That's the red conjecture. It's horrible calling myself red, even as though I named myself after some hero worship at a specific time when I press those buttons on my channel. So I'm always like red, but I guess it kind of fits in a way too, poetically, astrophysiologically, if you're into that. Okay, so I got cut off by my own thought process where I had to disconnect. And once again, it's like I must apologize. They say never apologize, never surrender. But in some sense, you should apologize. If you're biblic, seek heaven first. I have reached to somewhere, but I can't say I reached there. And if you're, see, this is my thing with God. They say Spinoza, he was like one of the most objective people, one of the most famous, and then again, this is just a they say. One of the most objective people, one of the most famous atheists, and incessantly, obsessively spoke of God. And then, of course, we refer to the Greeks, who the God was the good, but do we know what they meant? And then we see these classical and neoclassical paintings of the Greeks painted in their quote-unquote symbolic. So we're dealing with something very classic, so classic, where artists would take years drawing the skeletal structure beneath the body they were going to paint on a painting. This is what people did before, the internet and so on, when painting was the major public technology, or major technology allowed to be presented to the public. We shouldn't presume that those great masters of the Renaissance, whom most famously, contemporarily, is represented by Da Vinci, but we shouldn't assume Da Vinci or that which Da Vinci is presented to us as is the pinnacle of the Renaissance. That's the signpost. That's the finger pointing. So I guess I'm positing that Da Vinci, or the contemporary milieu of Da Vinci, the Da Vinci Code, all that kind of stuff, is not a being of an end, even though there's many things that I've gained from the concept, the movie, things I've seen on YouTube inspired by that idea, inspired by his notebooks, by his work. Never mind Michelangelo. Doesn't seem to be talked a lot about these days. Who, when he looked at a stone, saw a man. In that time of reason, Da Vinci, a thing, not a place, not a fixed point, moving point, a finger, something pointing towards something. So who knows what they really had then, but even if you study the history of what they had, I don't know what the number would be. Certainly not 1 out of 10. Certainly not 1 out of 100. Maybe 1 out of 1,000. Maybe 1 out of 10. 100,000. Maybe 1 out of 1,000,000. I don't know. But to even understand anything, from those great minds. And I guess this is a good point to at least reference, because I can say that in my life, many of the things that have instructed me have been snippets out of shit. You watch 2 hours of shit, and you might get 1, 2, 3 snippets. Other times you get something that is deeply poignant to the moment that you're in, and it hits you in that moment. And then it might be gone. It may return, and it may not, but it's a very temporal imprint, a fold. Maybe not a complete fold, a crease. Something that has a dramatic effect. But then there are other things like truly central creases. Some creases are around the edges, so to speak. Chords. Speaking a geometric chord between points on the perimeter, but not, there's only one chord that strikes the center, which is a diameter. That's a special chord. But not all diameters are the same if we're speaking about a sphere, never mind a hypersphere, which I don't understand, but I'm seeking the understanding of. If I understood the geometry of the hypersphere, understood, understood, overstood, whatever your vernacular or grammary, not to be flippant, but I guess that's just a response to the anti-kumbaya nature of truth-seeking, which it feels brutal. In that way, it is brutal. It's brutal. Truth-seeking is brutal. But it's not as brutal as being the mouse descended upon, even in your tunnel beneath the snow, by an owl silent at night. Anyway. Logos, mythos. I don't understand it. I'm seeking understanding and documenting it. Why? I can't say this is absolutely true, but it seems to be we have to allow for stupidity. We have to allow for failure. We cannot be afraid to fail, because we will. But then there are those crucial moments where we have to succeed, where success is mandatory, unequivocal. It is the directive. We must succeed at certain points. But at other points, it's important to fail so that we gain the knowledge, but we also cultivate the will. Man. I mean, will reaches back to the Greeks. The will of Schopenhauer, or The Will to Power of Nietzsche, which I've only read a little of, though I have read them. I haven't just read accounts of them. And if you want to stretch your imagination to the fullest, I mean, I only read Schopenhauer because of Nietzsche. I only read Nietzsche because of Milan Kundera. I only read Milan Kundera because a roommate I had when I was an art major at a state school was an English major who was just incessant about Milan Kundera. And I read maybe 8 or 9/10 of all of his books up to about just after 2000, because I was in a thing with that. And what was the Czech writer? I think he was Czech. See, I don't even know who wrote in French. I only read English. I don't even know what it is. If you could say I know it. But then, I'm just going to leave that where it is and talk about the other side of reason, which people don't talk about, but which I've heard it read again, mostly from Hockney about, was intuition. Is the other part of reason. Is the other part of reason, not as a part of mythos. Because we always put, I guess, ration against mythos, but I guess then there would be a couple sides of ration, a couple sides of mythos. It's kind of like also how I question sometimes how they say zero is the other side of infinity. Two sides of the same coin. Infinity, of course, associated with 8. We'll get to that. What if 0 was opposite of 1? Infinity was in between and outside, different infinities. So you could have 0 being the opposite of 1, and then Hegel's 2 infinities on the interior and the exterior. I don't know. Always trying to work these things out because there isn't a unified theory. There's not a unified theory in physics. The two most, so I've heard, the two most successful theories in history are they're incongruent. They're not incommensurate in a perfect way, because there is the idea of perfect incommensurability, which also would be perfect unity. So there's no unity and there's no incommensurability. What happens is that the calculations become so large, and the means that we have with them currently to deal with those numbers are insufficient. So in some sense, I guess I assume that minor tweakings here and there on what we know fixes everything. Then there is a unified theory. However, we can't just make these minor tweakings. We have to step all the way in, all the way out. We have to throw away everything to get right to the ratios, the proportions, the harmonics, the measurements. Other people say this way better than me, but if I'm to say anything, I will at least say this much because I owe it to them, and I owe it to myself, and I owe it to that which is beyond all of us, and that which encompasses all of us, circumscribes all of us, pierces all of us, penetrates all of us. Because if we don't, whatever's going on now, whatever that is, whatever that it is, that particular type of it, whatever that is that we're trying to defeat, and whatever that other it is that we're trying to become, it's these subtle nuances that make all the difference. And the subtle nuances occur at a very small exponent. However, the big picture of how to align these very subtle small details reach vast, and we must step very far back. So if we have these solutions, these unified theories, it's because, and that comes back to another hero of mine, like the whole Guido thing, and I'm one of those assholes who's going to talk about the incompleteness theorem without understanding. But I feel like, and this, it's only a feeling, so if you want to trash me on this, you are very welcome to do so. But he's dealing, he's from my standpoint, he's 100 years ago, so to speak, 1900s, early 1900s. And for the most part, a lot of awesome shit happened in the early 1900s. It's almost like the early 1900s jumped to now, and everything in between was horseshit. But like a lot of awesome stuff happened like 1880 to 1920-ish. Not that awesome shit didn't happen after, but like that seems like a really important moment. And even though we've made quote unquote more progress from then to now, I feel like that's been a fork in the road, or like a fork in the thunderbolt. Like, I feel like the last 100 years is a fork in the thunderbolt that is massive and powerful, but that's going to tie out, and not reach from the sky to the ground, so to speak. I feel like the counter-narrative, the narrative behind the narrative of the last 100 years is what is going to connect to the ground, so to speak. Like that's the true, thunderbolt man, or lightning bolt. Like the way that branches off. Most of that electricity kind of fizzles out to zero. Not that that's bad, but what makes the connection, I guess that's kind of what we're looking for. And yeah, I guess the world's real big. We're in the middle of this 100-year, 200-year Thunderbird. Everything's branching out in every direction and all crazy, so I guess we're in the belly of this extension where everything is so flayed and everything is so not just polarized, it's both polarized and radiated from the center of this electric sweat. But most of these branches will not be a piece of the central current that reaches from here to there. But are intrinsic, they're vital, they're important. So it's not to discount them as they are, but it's to recognize that the massive force, the thing that's really happening is this top to bottom, bottom to top. And all the sideways stuff, super important, super important. But we have to recognize where the form the ideas are filling out and the end of the individual striations, for lack of a better term. Anyway, what I was trying to get to was the other side of reason, which is intuition. And then separating that from the mythos. So it's a major project because so much of study is said about making this differentiation between logos and mythos. But then a more sophisticated study, I guess, and not, I hate the word sophisticated because it's related to sophistry. Though, sophistry can be good. Essentially, sophistry is amoral. But we associate sophistry with being immoral. However, if a moral man, an ethical and moral man, was also a sophist, what a powerful force he would be for the good and the truth. And what is intuition? We all know what it is. It's that gut feeling. The gut feeling. And there's a lot of levels to that.
It's a very nice wooden craft toy. It's the only version that I have in my collection.
But when we're in a certain state, we're seeking breath. We're seeking a feeling in our heart. We're seeking a thought in our mind. And then all of a sudden, we think something, we feel something, someone says something to us. However it is that our body responds and we feel that space in our belly. Where all of a sudden we could breathe in. And it feels like we go 1, 2, 3 places past where we breathed before.
Cleverest ones could actually make that because it's a craft toy. It's a wooden string, I guess.
And I guess that's one way of describing the intuitive mythos so far as I think
Resilience.
I understand it.
Heart. Community. These words define Boston every Patriots Day.
The problem is that
Lives on.
the pursuit of truth
Is our greatest statement of
requires obsession.
We are all cheering for the heroes on the front lines. We are more together.
Some would say passion. Though I've heard one very wise deride against passion in favor of enthusiasm. And for that unveiling of meaning would require delving into the depths, I guess, of the Greek and Armenian, but I don't have the talent to expound on it now. But or like whatever that is. And that's kind of like well, I don't know if this is connected or not, but it seems a good place to stick it. Like when we're talking about material, spiritual, never mind soul. Or like electric lines, easiest one. They're up above. They're mostly where I live. I guess in more urban areas, they're probably underground. But whatever the case may be, you have these charged airwaves that you can't see. Like the airwaves themselves are charged. I'm sorry, not the airwaves, the air, the space, the stuff, the gas. Whatever that space is around, all those electric lines in the air, it's all charged, but you can't see it. But the wires you see. And you could have all kinds of fears, or all kinds of you could praise the wires and the electricity. Whereas walking by, you could fear that these poles will fall and the electricity will hit you. So you have enough logos to understand the danger, and you have enough mythos to understand the danger. And you can let that run wild. But you can also let the praise run wild. In this very poor metaphor, I don't know how you find that like common ground or what have you. I guess it's just the idea that more than one thing's happening at once. There's a field, there's a quote-unquote particle, there's a line. There's a body, there's a spirit, there's a principle. Behind the still body with animated spirit. Never mind if that wire were in us, and then a different dynamic would be, well, it wouldn't just be a spiritual dynamic, so to speak. It would be a physical. If you can consider current as spiritual, or the electromagnetic spectrum as spiritual. I'm trying to hone in on these ideas, so it's hard to talk about.